crescia. And crescia means to grow. And we're making a cheese bread today, also known as pane di formaggio. And it's served for the feast of Sant'Ubaldo, or La Corsa dei Ceri. Now, to do it, we have to start with some yeast. And here, I have 1 3/4 cups of water. Now, you can use regular water, or what I like to do is use the water from making mashed potatoes. So when you boil potatoes, save that water, because the water has a lot of wonderful starch in it, and yeast just loves to feed on starch. So there's a tablespoon of yeast going into either 1 3/4 cups of warm water, about 110 degrees, or into potato water. And then you mix it up, let it sit around for a few minutes, and it will look like this. This is what we mean by proofing. Perfectly proofed yeast, ready to go, active. But before we can add it, we need to beat up these eggs. So I'm going to break the eggs up, and you notice I'm doing this in the insert of a crock pot, because you could actually bake this bread in a crock pot. This is a high-sided bread. So we've got 7 eggs. This gives a really nice yellow color and crumb to this bread. And then we want a teaspoon of coarse black pepper. Gives it just a nice oomph. And mix that in, and a 1/2 cup of extra virgine. Of course, it's Umbrian olive oil this time for moistness. And a cup of grated pecorino cheese, which you know is sheep's milk cheese. And I'm not going to add any salt, because we have plenty of salt right in that cheese. So the yeast and the water go in. This is going to make a really large loaf of bread, or you could make a few smaller ones. Mix this in, and now we need to add flour to this. So here we have, about 7.5 cups of flour. You'll use somewhere between 7 to 8 cups of flour. So I'm not going to put it all in at one time. I'm going to add just a little bit at a time. So now I have a pretty sticky dough. I'm going to take it out onto my board. That's a pretty heavy dough, and you can also do this if you wanted to in a KitchenAid mixer or a heavy-duty mixer that you have. So not too much flour. You notice I'm putting this in a little bit at a time. So when it is smooth and not sticking to your hands, then you can deal with the cheese. All right, so now I'm going to spread this dough out. Can you see those little flecks of pepper in there? Get this all spread out just roughly. And now here are our cheeses. This is just fior di latte, fresh mozzarella. It looks like this. This is how you buy it, usually in its own way. And we've diced it up here into small pieces. So some mozzarella goes on right over the top. And then we have provolone. This is another cow's milk cheese. We're going to put that in. So you want about 1.5 cups of the mozzarella, and you want about a cup of the provolone. So spread it out, and then gather the dough up and enclose all the cheese in the dough. Now you want to knead that again. All right, I think you get the idea. A little bit of olive oil in the base. Give that a little swirl. And we want to cover that tightly and put that aside now in a warm place, not hot, about 75 degrees. Then, when it's risen, push this down to disperse the gluten and the air, and you take it out. And now it's nice and fluffy, and it's still a little bit tacky, sticky, but that's okay, because we're going to need that again. So now it is nice and light, and it's easy to knead on the board. And you see it isn't sticking at all. Yes, wonderful. All right, so now we set this aside. Now we have options. And here's what I'm doing for you today. I'm going to take about 2/3 of that dough, and I'm going to cook this in a crock pot insert. And all I did was grease this really well. So you want to make sure you have olive oil all the way on the bottom and up the sides. Then take that ball of dough, knead it again until it's a nice round, and put it right in the crock pot. Then you're going to set this one aside. Here's a neat idea. How about doing it in a panettone paper? These you can buy in a cookware store. You can get them on the internet. And these are papers that can actually go in the oven. You want to put a little bit of olive oil in that as well. Grease it all the way around. If you didn't have that, folks, you can make it in a lunch bag just by turning down the collar and greasing the bag. And yes, baking the dough right in a paper bag. Believe me, I've done it. Okay, so here's our other 1/3 of dough. Again, we're going to knead that so that it's nice and smooth. Wonderful. Looks good. That goes in the panettone paper, just like that. And we want these to rise about 2/3 up the side of the pan. So you take a towel and you cover these for about 30 minutes. Look at that. That's ready to go. And this is another crock pot insert idea. So now this is ready to be baked. Our oven is on at 375 degrees. We're going to put it in and cook that for about 40-45 minutes. Need I say more? And how do we know when that's cooked? Well, several ways. You can use a cake skewer, put it into the bread, and pull it out. And if it's clean, you know you have no wet crumb there. Or you can use an instant read thermometer. If it registers between 200 and 210, it's done. So there you have it.